So hello guys, our today's topic is on subject dental histology. So let us discuss few important MCQ related to subject dental histology. The first question is fiber that is not attached to bone is. Well, the fibers that are not attached to bone, they are the transseptal fibers. These are the transseptal fibers you can see in this pic. Transseptal fibers, they are collagen fibers. They are not attached to bone, but they connect the cementum of one tooth to cementum of other. So here are these transseptal fibers. They connect from cementum of one tooth to cementum of other. So these fibers, they play a role in stabilizing the position of teeth within the dental arch. Other options, the first option is oblique fibers. So these are the oblique fibers. They run diagonally from cementum to the alveolar bone. So these fibers provide support and withstand the masticatory forces during chewing and biting. So many a times MCQ has been asked, what is the role of oblique fibers? They bear the masticatory forces. The horizontal fibers, they run horizontally from cementum of alveolar bone, cementum to the alveolar bone. So they are mainly responsible for resisting the horizontal forces acting on the tooth. So your answer will be transseptal fibers. Moving to next question. The stria of Retzius often extend from dentino-enamel junction to outer surface of enamel, where they end in shallow furrows that are known as pericymata. So pericymata, they are the shallow furrows or ridges on the outer surface of enamel. So they are result of incremental growth of enamel during tooth development and are commonly seen on the crown. So the stria of Retzius, they are pattern of alternating dark and light bands that can be seen in a tooth enamel under the microscope. So that lines provide the insight into the growth and development of the tooth. Now how these stria of Retzius are developed, let us discuss that. The process starts when the myeloblast, which are the specialized cells, secrete enamel proteins during tooth development. So a myeloblast don't secrete enamel continuously. They do it in rhythmic in cycles. So the dark bands represents the period of slow enamel secretion. So during these times, the myeloblast might have been less active during the enamel formation. The other are the light bands. They represent the period of more enamel formation, that is rapid enamel secretion. So when the myeloblast, they are active depositing the enamel protein. So each dark and light band, it represents the increment layer of the of enamel depositing during one of each cycle. So sometimes certain events during the tooth development that can lead to prominent lines that are known as sinuated line of Retzius. So overall, the tooth continue to develop. These increment lines forms a unique pattern on the tooth surface. That is what we see as stria of Fredgers. So in the summary, these stria of Fredgers, they are formed due to the rhythmic secretion of enamel by the enameloblast during tooth development. So together these patterns provide a record of tooth development much like a tree ring. Moving to next question, the alveolar bone. The alveolar bone refers to bone that surrounds and support the teeth. Within the dental sockets of the maxillary and mandibular jaw, so that play an important role in encouraging the tooth in their socket, and that is why they will provide support for the entire dentition. The alveolar bone, remember, it follows the slope of adjacent cemento-enamel junction. So cemento-enamel junction is a point where tooth enamel meets the cementum. So the alveolar bone indeed follows the contour and slopes of adjacent cemento-enamel junction. So the close adaptation of alveolar bone to teeth, it is important for tooth stability and function. So option A is right. Option B, it contains fibrous tissue. Alveolar bone, it is primarily composed of spongy bone and compact bone that provides structural support for the teeth. Option C comprises red bone marrow only. It is not accurate. Alveolar bone contains both the red bone marrow as well as yellow bone marrow. So red bone marrow is associated with blood cell formation, while yellow bone marrow, it is more fatty and serve as energy reserve. The option D regenerates easily after periodontal therapy. It is not generally true. Alveolar bone loss due to the advanced periodontal disease can often be irreversible to some extent. So that's not always true. So your answer is A. The pain response, the pulpal response is quick and sharp when carried by A delta myelinated fibers. So remember, A delta fibers, they are principally located in the region of pulp dental junction. They are characteristic by sharp pricking pain. So the sharp and pricky pain are the characteristic of A delta myelinated fibers. Whereas C fibers, they are distributed throughout the pulp and they have a burning, aching, less bearable sensations than A delta fibers. So this table is very, very important. A alpha fibers, their function is motor and proprioception. A beta fibers, their function is related to pressure and touch. A gamma fibers, A delta fibers, their function is related to pain, temperature, touch, etc. So remember all these value-based questions, and which has the fastest conduction velocity, it's the A alpha fibers. So remember that for your exam point of view. Moving to the next question. Osteonectin. The osteonectin, it is a glycoprotein found in bone and dentin. It is composed of various amino acids including glutamine and aspartic acid. So these two options are correct. So osteonectin, it is a glycoprotein in the bone that binds calcium. So it is secreted by osteoblast during bone formation, initiating mineralization and promoting mineral crystal formation. So option B, osteonectin, it is indeed found in extracellular matrix of bone and dentin. The pre-dentin, it is the unmineralized matrix that exists before the dentin mineralization. So B is correct. Osteonectin contains sequence that can interact with cell surface and it is involved in cell matrix interaction. That is also correct. So all of the statements are correct. Answer is T. Moving to next question. The semanticals may dwell from, well, the semanticals, they are the small spicules or cementum. They are found in periodontal ligament or around the root of the tooth. It can dwell from various sources, including number 1, the calcified epithelial rest. These are the remnants of the Hartwig epithelial root sheath that is involved in tooth development. So calcified epithelial rest can sometimes give semanticals. The calcified thrombosed vesicles within the periodontal ligament can lead to formation of semanticals. Calcified Sharp's fibers. The Sharp's fibers are the collagen fibers that encourage the periodontal ligament to the cementum and the bone. So if these fibers they become calcified, they can contribute to formation of semanticals. So answer is D, all of the above. The nerve fiber of the pulp, the answer is D. The nerve fibers in the pulp, they are not uniform in their distribution. Nerve fiber in the pulp are not evenly distributed throughout the entire pulp tissue. Instead, they tend to be concentrated in some area. The nerve fibers are more densely packed in the pulp chamber and less concentrated as they extend toward the pulp horns. So the pulp, it contains both the myelinated fibers and the unmyelinated fibers. The myelinated fibers, they have a myelin sheath, protective myelin sheath around them, and they tend to transmit signal more rapidly. Whereas the unmyelinated fibers lacks this myelin sheath and transmit signal more slowly. So the nerve fibers in the pulp, they act as both sensory and autonomic function. Sensory nerve fibers transmit pain and sensory information, while the autonomic, they regulate functions like blood flow and immune response within the pulp. So option A, mainly myelinated fibers, they have myelinated and as well as unmyelinated fibers easily damaged by inflammation. So answer is D. A group of gingival ligament running apically from the cementum over the periosteum of outer cortical plates of alveolar process insert into the vestibular muscles and floor of mouth. It is dentoperiosteal fibers. So dentoperiosteal fibers are the group of gingival fibers that run across cementum over the periosteum and they insert into the vestibular muscles and floor of mouth. So answer is dentoperiosteal fibers. Which of following is hypomineralized structure in the enamel? Hypomineralized means there is lower mineral content in the enamel, making it less dense and more prone to structural issues. So enamel lamellae, they are thin leaf-like enamel lamellae, they are thin leaf-like defect or crack that extends partially into the enamel. They can be considered a form of enamel hypoplasia and are associated with localized enamel defect. The increment line of red gears, they represents the incremental growth pattern of enamel. Some of these lines may be hypomineralized or less mineralized and can be associated with enamel structural variation. However, the option B, C, D, they don't accurately represent the hypomineralized structures in the enamel. So Gnarled enamel, it is enamel with complex twisted pattern and it is not necessarily hypomineralized. Pericymata, they are not typically associated with hypomineralized structures. They are the shallow furrows or ridges on the enamel surface formed due to the increment enamel growth. Enamel lamella and enamel prism, they are the basic structure units of enamel and they are not inherently hypomineralized. So your answer is A. Next question, moving to next question. The matrix vesicles, they play an important role in mineralization of, the matrix vesicles, they play important role in mineralization of dentin, that is the hard tissue that make up the majority of the tooth structure beneath the enamel. The dentin, it is a mineralized tissue and process of dentinogenesis involves the deposition of minerals like calcium and phosphate within the dentin matrix. The matrix vesicles, they are the tiny membrane bound organelles that are involved in the mineralization process and attract these mineral ions and thereby formation and mineralization of dentin. So answer is dentin. During normal bone healing, osteoblasts, they are derived from monocyte precursor cells. Osteoclasts, on the other hand, are derived from periosteum and endosteum. Choose the correct statement. Option A, statement 1 is false because osteoblasts, they are responsible for bone formation. They are not derived from monocytes but from the mesenchymal stem cells in the bone marrow of periosteum. So option A is false. Osteoclasts, they are derived from hematopoietic stem cells in bone marrow and they are part of monocyte macrophage. They play a role in breaking down the bone tissue and not in its formation. So option B is also false. Answer is B. The fibers of periodontal ligament that provide the maximum resistance to vertical masticatory forces, they are the oblique fibers. They resist the masticatory forces. We have discussed that before too. So answer is oblique fibers. They run diagonally from cementum to the alveolar bone. So their diagonal orientation allows them to absorb and dissipate the vertical forces effectively. That will provide stability to tooth and prevent excessive movement under the vertical pressure. So when it comes to resisting vertical masticatory forces, the oblique fibers of the periodontal ligament, they plays a crucial role. Moving to next question. The function of the dental sac. So the function of dental sac is to provide a nutrition. So dental sac, it is also known as dental follicle. It is a connective tissue that surrounds the developing tooth germ. So one of its main function is to provide nutrition to the developing enamel organ and dental papilla that are the component of the tooth germ. So this dental sac, it has a rich blood supply and the vascular network will ensure that enamel organ and dental papilla both receive the necessary nutrients for the formation and growth of the tooth. So dental papilla, it is basically a condensed mass of mesenchymal tissue that is located within the tooth. It is developed from ectomesenchyme that originates from neural crest cells. So dental papilla, remember dental papilla, it is responsible for giving dentine and pulp. So think of a dental sac like a protective hug around a developing tooth. It is like a support system that forms around the tooth and becomes the periodontium, that includes the periodontium, cementum and the alveolar bone. So the dental sac surrounds and creates structure that keeps tooth securely encouraged in your mouth. Moving to the next question, the maxillary sinus, it starts developing at the age of 3rd month of fetus. Maxillary sinus, they are the air contained spaces that occupy the maxillary bone bilaterally. So the maxillary sinus begins in the 3rd month of fetal development. So remember, maxillary sinus, they are the first of all paranasal sinus to begin their development during the embryonic growth. All of the following are the function of maxillary sinus, except they helps in mastication. They don't helps in mastication. So the maxillary sinus do have several functions, including contributing resonance to the voice, protecting internal structures against exposure to cold air, producing bactericidal enzymes, and they do not directly play a role in mastication. Mastication involves the action of jaw muscle, teeth, and associated structures within the oral cavity. So answer is D. The secretory cells present in subepithelial gland of maxillary sinus, they are. So the subepithelial glands in maxillary sinus, they contains both the mucus and the serous cells. These glands produce mucus that helps to moisten and protect the lining of sinus. The mucus cells, they are responsible for producing a mucus with a thicker, more viscous consistency, while the serous, they produce a thin, watery secretions. Intermediate plexus, it is seen in the intermediate plexus. It is a network of intermingling fibers in the periodontal ligament. These fibers, they are located between the alveolar bone and cementum of actively erupting teeth. So they play a role in anchoring and supporting the tooth within the socket. Which of following fibers prevents the extrusion of the teeth? So it's the alveolar crus fibers. They are the group of periodontal fibers that runs from the cervical cementum to the alveolar crest. So these fibers are responsible in preventing the extrusion movement, that is the upward movement of tooth from the socket. So they help to maintain the proper positioning of tooth within the oral cavity by resisting the forces that causes tooth to move vertically. First evidence of TMJ development, it is seen at 10 weeks. So remember this. It was asked in your AIMS entrance exam. So remember this. Many a times this question has been asked. Hunter-Schreger bands, they are best viewed in. They are an optical phenomenon in dental enamel due to arrangement of enamel rods. So when light is reflected on the enamel surface, it can reveal the characteristic pattern of these bands that results from crossing over of enamel rods within the enamel tissues. So these are they are best viewed in reflected light. The myoepithelial cells, they are seen in relation to secretory and intercalary ducts. Myoepithelial cells, they are the contractile cells associated in salivary glands. They are associated with both secretory acini and intercalary ducts. The intercalary ducts, these are the small ducts that connect secretory acini to the larger ducts. So what is the role of these myoepithelial cells? They play a role in expulsion of the saliva from acini into the ducts. So that aids in the movement of secretion through the salivary gland system. Dental pulp is derived from mesenchyme. The cell responsible for histological variation in pleomorphic adenoma are the myoepithelial cells. Pleomorphic adenoma, it's a benign salivary gland tumor. The myoepithelial cells, they are responsible for histological variation seen in the tumor. So these cells, they can differentiate into various structures, include the glassy, stroma, cartilage, bones-like structures, and fibrous element. So this variation is characteristic feature of the pleomorphic adenoma. The increment lines of Rutgers are seen in ground transverse section as concentric circles in the enamel, which resembles rings in a tree trunk. Already discussed. So these lines represents the rings in tree and are notable features in the dental histology. They represents the darkish or brownish band in the ground section and their concentric circular pattern is the distinguishing characteristic. In the transverse section, the incremental lines would appear as concentric circles. Sensitivity to pain is least likely to seen in the labial mucosa. So the labial mucosa is less sensitive to pain as compared to other tissues. The dental papilla is formed from, already discussed, it is formed from actin mesenchymal cells. So dental papilla, it is a condensation of ectomesenchymal cells. So they are responsible for giving dentine and pulp. So you can remember the mnemonic dental papilla. It consists of two words. One is T and other is P. So D will give dentine and P will give pulp. So dental papilla forms dentine and as well as the pulp. That is not a stage in life cycle of ameloblast. It's the matrix stage. So these are the stages: morphogenic stage, organizing phase, formative phase, maturative, protective, and demolytic. So your answer is D. The pulp, it contains which collagen fibers? The pulp contains type 1, that are the predominant, and type 3 collagen fibers.